evening. Thank you for supporting Sinister Wisdom. Thank you and congratulations to the co-editors of this issue of the journal, all of the contributors, and really all of the women who've been involved with the Lesbian Herstory Archives since its beginning 45 years ago. I feel that everyone's presence is with us this evening as we celebrate this work. So now I'll turn the mic over to Sean Smith-Cruz, one of the co-editors of Sinister Wisdom 118, 45 Years, a tribute to the Lesbian Herstory Archive. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And thank you everyone for coming. I wanted to give you the opportunity to see each other's faces before we bring back a slide deck because I saw people wanting to go to gallery view and stare at each other for a little bit. So this is your chance because we're going to bring up another slide deck right now as I share my screen. So thank you for bearing with me. So welcome to this historic occasion. As Julie mentioned, I'm Shanta Smith-Cruz, and I'm so pleased to represent alongside all of the other amazing speakers that we're going to have to celebrate this issue of Sinister Wisdom for the Lesbian Herstory Archives, a tribute to the Lesbian Herstory Archives. I also want to thank Julie for her hard work putting this issue together and for the work that she does with Sinister Wisdom. You're amazing. And I want to also thank our co-sponsors. Thank you to CLAGS, the Center for LGBTQ Studies, for allowing us to list this in CLAGS's list of events. Thank you to NYU and the Division of Libraries at NYU for making this a part of the Women 100 series, which celebrates the lives, pursuits, innovations, and achievements of women of transgender, non-binary, and cisgender experiences. And before we continue to thank, celebrate, and honor the women of this issue and of the Lesbian Herstory Archives, I want us to also acknowledge that this is a tumultuous time. And with all of this time, we stand on occupied land. So we're going to actually do a land dedication and acknowledgement. As lesbians who have fought all odds to create and nurture community, allowing what was once impossible to be possible. It's a kind of time travel, wouldn't you agree? And yet here we are in various spaces, traveling through and within time. I'd like to honor and pay homage to the many ancestors who make this community sing. The lesbians that have fallen and in space acknowledge the grounds that we inhabit. The Lesbian Herstory Archives is located on the Lenape territories, and to that space and in honor of recently passed Indigenous Peoples Day, we honor the lesbians of the land, past, present, and future, that have worked to make this time travel possible. I'm speaking to you from the Lenape and Wappinger territories and bring with me my Garifuna and Jamaican ancestors, and for all of us in all of our communities that have fallen and that we continue to hold up. Let's honor their legacy. I'm also going to invite Paula Grant, who has been a coordinator at LHA with us since 1979, to say the names of women to whom this issue has been dedicated in memoriam. Paula, go ahead and unmute your microphone.
I'm honored to call out in beloved memory the names of Vicki Sherman, Arissa Reed, 1957 to 1986, Rota Silvestrini, 1941 to 1987, Mabel Hampton, 1902 to 1989, Julia Penelope Stanley, 1941 to 2013, and Georgia Brooks, 1943 to 2013. Thank you.
Let's take another moment of silence. Thank you. The images that you've seen upon entry are from Morgan Gwenwall, a current and longstanding coordinator of the Lesbian Herstory Archives. She's not here with us on this call, but she gathered her images as an offering, so thank you to Morgan. This image that you see is of women holding hands at the Rivers of Honey Wild Cafe Theater a few years ago, and is also located in our collection. And so with our hands clasped together, let us begin first with some housekeeping. We're in Zoom in this virtual space together, and here's how it's going to work. We'll keep the slides up during the reading so that you have something to look at other than people's faces, although people's faces are also amazing, but you can do both. We'll have images of faces. You can click the gallery view at the upper right corner of your screen, which will allow you to create sort of a toggling space on the side. We want you to mute your microphone, so please keep that muted. But we also want you to chat. Use chat. Elvis Bakaitis, who's also one of the editors of this issue, excuse me, will be taking the questions that you have in the chat and putting them in a document so that we can answer them at the end. We're also going to archive the chat. So if you'd like to send LHA a message to record, write whatever you want, write your desires, write a story, write your love letters to each other and your past loves and your future loves in the chat. We're going to make sure the chat goes into the Lesbian Herstory Archives. Once all the speakers are completed, we will have time for you to communicate outside of this forum. So one after the other is how it's going to go. We're going to have readings from some of the contributors to the issue. That includes, we're going to start with Joe Nessel, who's going to read on Anne Ellen Shockley and Naomi Raplansky. Then we're going to have Deb Edel, Ellen Bax for Little Rainbows, Linda McKinney, who will be in conversation with Saskia Sheffer, Alana Dykewoman, Lucinda Zoe, Stefani Ikavaris-Fenn, and then Meenakshi Pulapalli will lead us to the end, where then we'll have an open chat and Q&A. And then Julie's going to lead us in a song at the end. So without further explanation, I want to welcome Joan Nessel. Joan Nessel is a co-founder of the Lesbian Herstory Archives. She will read from her notes for a special issue and excerpts from two contributors, Anne Ellen Shockley and Naomi Raplansky. Joan, please unmute your mic.
I have. Welcome, everyone. Acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge that I speak to you from the traditional country of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations and pay respect to elders past and present. I acknowledge that their sovereignty has never been ceded. The beginning of our journey tonight, I'm representing the over 80s on this journey, and that's myself, Anne, and Naomi. From my notes for the issue, from a conversation around the Lesbian Herstory Archives dinner work table, 1979, the speaker, a Jewish woman in her 60s, says, I had a chance to read The Well of Loneliness that had been translated into Polish before I was taken into the camps. I was a young girl at the time, and one of the ways I survived in the camp was by remembering that book. I wanted to live long enough to kiss a woman. 45 years ago, movements of liberation made possible the birth of a new project in the world, the Lesbian Herstory Archives. Our vision was of an inclusive grassroots collection that welcomed all expressions of lesbian life, from the bar life of the 50s and before, to the lesbian feminist richness of the mid-20th century and beyond, to the gender richness of the 21st. Not a role model archives, but one expressive of the complexities of how we made our way in the world. We were of the left, and that is important. Creating the archives was an extension of our activist vision, of our belief in a collectivist site of cultural memory, the refusal of prevailing historical amnesia because we were judged a deviant people. Now, in these times, Our places of cultural autonomy hold the stories of how we used our imaginations and our bodies to refuse ordained national brutalities. And now, having Anne and Naomi given me permission to make a selection from their contributions, I'm going to begin with Anne Allen Shockley. 93 years of teaching, writing, and breaking new ground. As she says, she was born a Southern feminist before the word became a shibboleth. Award-winning writer of 7 nonfiction and fiction books, such as Loving Her in 1974, Say Jesus and Come to Me in 1980, and The Black and White of It in, 1980, the first collection of short stories about lesbians by a Black woman writer. She's also the author of Afro-American Women Writers, 1746 to 1933, and was the university archivist at Fisk, where she founded the Black Oral History Program, published a handbook for the administration of special Black collections in 1970, and co-edited the Handbook of Black Librarianship in 1977. And this is from her contribution, Remembering Apartment 13A. As one who has always had a love for history, on August 7th, 1975, I wrote to the LHA to seek information on the other Black woman, the invisible Black lesbian. In view of the climate of those times, grappling with the surging gay rights movement spurred on by the civil rights and women's movements, I felt there was a need to ferret out voices that had been too long layered under the triple jeopardy of Black, female, and lesbian in a racist and sexist society. In the words of Barbara Smith, to be out in the 60s and 70s, you had to be a warrior. After 3 years of writing back and forth, I made it to 13A. The archive soon became a place to roost when I required a quick overnight spot. It was during an extended stay that I met Mabel Hampton, a voice of Black lesbian history mirrored in life. I shall always remember with humor one New Year's Eve night in 13A when Mabel was there to look after me. How just before the ball dropped, we stood gazing out the window at the brightly lit New York skyline, Mabel sipping her favorite cup of tea, and I, my favorite vodka and tonic, with Mabel constantly asking me if I didn't want a cup of tea. I found this amusing. Tea, me, on New Year's Eve, my reputation would be ruined. Mabel, a young North Carolina import to New York, had lived an extraordinary life. She had danced with a Black female group during the famous Harlem Renaissance period of the 20s, hobnobbed at lavish parties of Black and gay lesbians thrown by such as Lila Walker, partied with Gladys Bentley, Black lesbian musician noted for wearing men's clothing and reputed to have coined the term cross-dressing. Mabel had shindigged with Mons Mabley, Black lesbian and first stand-up female comedian. I also met Georgia Brooks, a strong worker and supporter for the archives. Georgia became a lasting friend until she died in 2013. Georgia and Mabel would sometimes be at the archives, keeping me company while I dug through the records. Georgia had a devout love of the theater, and we would frequently attend a play she thought I should see. These visits and memories of special people whom I met at 13A are still vivid in my aging mind. I'm delighted to know of the archive's growth from its humble origins in 13A to the striking edifice of today in Brooklyn, an oasis for people who, like I did, wanted to find and unveil another segment of women's lives and gifts to us. And the words of Naomi Raplansky, a poet born in the Bronx over a century ago, her first book, Ring Song, 1952, was nominated for a National Book Award, followed by The Dangerous World in 1992, and the collected poems of 2012. My first encounter with the Lesbian Herstory Archives. It was the early 1970s. I found the building just off Broadway, 215 West 92nd Street. A pre-war building, slightly shabby but well-built. The Upper West Side of New York was not yet gentrified in those days. I was nervous as I rang the elevator. I felt exposed. Lesbian Herstory Archives. I didn't like the pun. I had to push myself to come here. It was publicizing my private life. Would I be recognized by the straight folk, the neighbors? Would I be revealed for what I was? Would the word lesbian be shouted from the rooftops? Yet here I was, a grown woman. I scolded myself. I nervously rang the apartment bell of 13A. A warmth of welcome greeted me. Joan showed me around the shelves of books, the files, the manuscripts, the old journals, the artifacts of lesbian life hung on the walls, T-shirts with slogans posted, most motorcycle helmets, tattered copies of the early paperback novels I had read in my hungry adolescence. Anguished letters of Midwestern secret lovers. At a long table, women were involved in various tasks: bibliographic, research, collating, writing, designing. They were all volunteers, all participating in building a historical record that until then had been ignored, trivialized, snickered at. The encounter was a revelation to me. And I'll end by saying it was also that we could give at that point, Naomi, the first time she had ever seen her first lesbian poems published in the 1939 Toonie Gordy collection of American women poets that we had at the archives. And I'm ending now, but I just want to say my heart is so full with love for the old and the new and the future and the past. Thank you, every single one of you who helped make today possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joan. That was perfect. And as I said, Joan is, of course, one of the co-founders of the Lesbian Herstory Archives, visiting us from Australia. So thank you for being here. And we have another co-founder on today who is still a very, very active day-to-day in and out of the buildings, has never left, has always been the most active, and holds us together, is our treasurer, is our beating heart, and that wasn't written down, so I'm actually gonna read what I wrote down. Deborah Edel, or Deb, is one of the founders of the Lesbian Herstory Archives. She's been working with the archives steadily since its inception in 1974. Deb, please unmute your mic.
How the archives got its name. Some people remember conversations almost verbatim. I don't. I remember some of the visual aspects more clearly. So having said that, let me tell the story of how the Lesbian Herstory Archives got its name. In the winter and spring of 1974, a group of women inspired to collect lesbian history met regularly to begin the process of building an organization. The group meetings varied in size, but averaged around 10 or more women at any one meeting. I don't have a strong recollection of what went on those meetings, but I do remember the naming meeting. By June 1974, we realized that it was time to come up with a formal name for the work we were intending to do and a collection we were intending to build. The June meeting was held in the apartment of Naomi Hollick and Barbara Levy. Joan, who had been a driving force behind much of the meeting and planning, was not at this meeting, as she had started out on a cross-country car journey. I remember that the room was full, and I found a chair by the hall doorway. There was no disagreement about the first word, lesbian. We all knew that we did not want to use one of the popular terms at the time, woman, women, woman, woman, as we felt that this was not an accurate reflection of the work we wanted to collect. We knew also that homosexual and gay were not the right fit, and that dyke was also not inclusive enough. So lesbian it was. The next word we came up with was her story or herstory. Though we were sure we had not coined the term, it was not one we heard around the lesbian, gay, or women's communities. We knew that this play on the word history had nothing to do with its origin. But for years to come, we got letters from women chiding us on the misuse of the origin of the word. Finally, after the bit of wordplay, we decided we wanted to be taken seriously by the academic world. and so the word archives was chosen. Thus the name Lesbian Herstory Archives. Before I leave you to the next reader, I want to take a moment though to thank a few different groups of people. First of all, I would like to thank the women who at the beginning believed in us enough that they were willing to share their funds with us so that we could buy some of the most important material that we needed. And second, I would like to thank the women at the beginning and to today who have enough trust in us to believe that we are here and will be here and shared their lives, their stories, their photographs, the bits and pieces of their lives with us. Because if they did not share these things, we would have continued to be a dream and not the reality that we are. So thank you. Thank you to everybody who has volunteered, who has visited, and who believes in the dream of the archives and is helping make it a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. That was really, if we were in person, it would be the moment where everybody starts clapping and cheering and you would receive flowers and there would be like a very big pause. So thank you. We're going to move to a different section of the collection where we are looking at some of the current programs at the Lesbian Herstory Archives, one of which is called Little Rainbows. Ellen Baxt is going to speak for the many people who are part of the Little Rainbows Collective. Ellen Baxt is a poet and native Brooklynite. She works with adult literacy programs throughout New York City and state, and is here to tell us about this monthly event held at LHA called Little Rainbows. Ellen, you can unmute your microphone.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. And our Little Rainbows Collective is also here. We are made up of Catalina Schliebner,
yeah, I mean, there's no lights in here. So
Alexis Clements, Luciana Pinchiero, and Elvis Bakaitis. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what Little Rainbows Storytime is and how it came to be. So we are a very recent addition to the archives. We have been there for about 2.5 years. And we come together every month, except we have not been there in person during, as we say in my house, virus times. And we come together every month to bring kids to the archives and to have a story time where we read particular kinds of stories. So the way it started is that Kata, who is my daughter's babysitter, who you see in that picture there, brought my daughter Lena to the archives one day when she was visiting her partner Alexis, doing some research there. And they discovered that the archives has a great little collection of children's stories. And so they sat down and had an amazing time visiting with the children's books and being in the cozy space and looking at the artifacts there. And she came home to me and said, "What do you think about doing a story time in the archives?" And so we have been doing it there monthly for about 2.5 years. And every month we have families return who've been to previous story times. And every single month we have new people come who are so glad to be in queer family community because it can be really isolating to be a young queer family. So Alexis wrote an article, so I'm going to read a little bit from the article, and then I'm going to read a little bit from an article that I wrote about how people can start their own queer family story time wherever they live. We are so lucky in New York City that we get to have the Lesbian Herstory Archives. But if you're not in New York City or if you're not in Brooklyn, you can still have a similar story time. So I wrote an article for another magazine where I'm telling people how you can start your own. In Alexis's article, I'm just going to read a little bit from each of us, the organizers, who wrote about what Little Rainbows means to us. So I'll start with what I wrote. I wanted to start this story time not only to bring kids into the archives, but also to create a space dedicated to telling stories that present a diverse range of families and characters and show the traits I hoped my child would embody, like kindness, courage, truth-telling, and advocacy. These were not the kinds of stories we were hearing at any other story time. As queers, we know that words are powerful, but unfortunately, most of that power is not represented in most children's books. And as a single dyke mom, I was lonely for community. I co-created this story time to fill a need I had in my own family. Catalina said, I thought this place could be very interesting and attractive for a child, a place that is cozy like a house, and at the same time full of books, photos, and objects. It would undoubtedly amaze any child, and in the process, create an opportunity to connect queer families. And Lou said, I was invited to join Little Rainbows at a time in my life when I was going through a lot of big changes. I found in Little Rainbows a home, a place where I felt safe, surrounded by respect and love. Elvis said, I was excited to team up with folks for this project. A dose of rainbow magic is a great way to spend a Saturday, and also a way to help queer kids and adults connect. And I'm going to put in the chat a link to the article that I wrote. That is called, let me just put this in here. So it's called Daddy, What's a Dyke? How I Co-Created Little Rainbow Storytime, and You Can Too. So here you see pictures from, on the left is a picture from our very first story time, where we had about 75 people packed into the archives. And every month we read stories that are about diverse families and kids standing up for each other and important history. And it's a place where people just feel so welcome and are new to the archives. So most of the people who come to Little Rainbow Storytime did not know that the archives existed, or maybe they heard of it, but they'd never been there before. So we're so happy to bring kids and families into the space, and also to have a beautiful space to read these stories. I think I'm gonna stop there, and thank you for listening to our history.
Bell.
Come on.
Thanks, Ellen. I love when we get a little bit of feedback from the world. That's always fun. Okay, so next up, we have Linda McKinney. Now you'll notice on the back of your, or on the front cover of the issue, we have an amazing jacket. And so we're gonna talk to the owner of that jacket. Linda McKinney is a dyke from New York City who has been a coordinator at LHA in the 80s and 90s. Her jacket graces the cover of this special issue, and she's being interviewed by her friend, biggest fan, and LHA coordinator, Saskia Sheffer, who's been a coordinator since 1989. Saskia is a photographer and librarian in New York City. Linda and Saskia, please unmute your mics.
Well,
Hello.
Hi, Linda, and everybody else. Welcome to this event. It is wonderful, and I'm going to start with saying that, Linda, I am so grateful for you for making something clear to me that I don't think I always am aware of. which is the way in which the archives is a two-way street between the people who donate the material and the archives itself. It is an incredible gift of faith and trust to simply or not simply hand over the things that are so important in your life that you made, that you experienced, and trust that they will be handled with care and made available in the right context. And that became so clear to me when you told me you missed your jacket. So anyway, I love that jacket, and I'm so grateful that we have it, and I hope that soon we can open again so that you can come and look at it in real time. But for now, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you made the connection to the archives when you first came to 92nd Street, and how did that go? How did you find the archives?
Well, I'm an artist, and basically I was doing some artwork, and while doing some artwork, I made something I consider to be a lesbian flag. I was so excited about it. I wanted to show it to somebody. I wanted to show somebody in the community. So I got a phone book and I looked up, I believe it was a phone book. I can't say how I got the information for the archives, but I got the information for the archives. Let me call them. It took me a couple of days because I was nervous. I figured, how they going to feel about this? You know, I'm just like, all of a sudden, like, here's a flag. Like, okay. But I did get the chance to call them. And when I called, it was a very friendly woman, very smiling, laughing, you know, on the phone. And I told her what I did. She's like, oh, you know, oh, great. You know, let's bring it on down. I'm like, whoa, that's interesting.
And who was that?
Aurora Sabasu.
Yes.
I haven't seen her in years, but life is like that sometimes. But I came down, I met Aurora and all the women from the archives. It was great. I found it interesting was inside of an apartment. I'm thinking about, okay, somebody like you have now, but I'm like, this is in somebody's apartment and this place is kicking it. I'm like, wonderful. I spent a couple of years volunteering and I had a wonderful time.
So I remember you told me about the jacket, and I was wondering where did you find all the imagery, all the iconography, all the images on it? Where did you get that inspiration?
Came out of my mind.
Came out of your mind.
Yeah. Since I do artwork, I sat down, I would think about things and create things. I was trying to go into jewelry, but that did not work. So I had all these designs. I put them on the jacket because I was hoping to use the jacket as a way for working, advertisement and stuff, but it didn't work out that way.
You know, you told me about the jacket, something that I never knew, and I've looked at it many, many times, but there's actually embroidery under the collar. If you flip up the collar, you can see more design. That was just so wonderful to discover. And you also told me a little bit about what it was like to wear that jacket, either in the Bronx or in the South. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
In the South, they didn't react, which is odd because a labrys is the old battle axe. It's a religious symbol. So for them, it's like, okay, this is over, you know, feminist dyke walking around with a jacket with a big, you know, labrys on it, you know, big, you know, axe. They didn't really concern. In the Bronx, it was more like, we will kill you. Who do you think you are? Because I realized people in the Bronx also wear jackets with things on the back, but not exactly what I was thinking about. So like, you know, like, okay, I'm going to leave this alone. But wearing in the city was interesting. It grew the attention of a lot of people, men and women. I've had people try to take the jacket from me. I've had people try to talk the jacket from me. Some people thought it was gang related. Some thought it was drug related. But some women actually got it. They're like, I love this jacket. This is fantastic. You know, everybody had their own opinion about it. Since I continued to make jackets, after a while, I basically made a new jacket and put that one up. Since I did not want harm to come, because in my life, even now, I do come to things where I might lose everything. Something might happen to me. So I want this jacket to continue existing in, you know, in the community, in the world. So I gave it to loan to the archives. I still have ownership of it, but I'll just leave it there because it's safer with the archives than it is with me. I got a jacket destroyed not too long ago. It was something that happened in my apartment, so that could have been that jacket. It would probably not exist right now. Well, the jacket that got destroyed don't exist anymore, but that's life.
I thank you so much for trusting us with the jacket. I thank you so much for making it. And I see every photo I've seen of you tonight, and I've seen a couple of them in Morgan's beautiful portraits. I think you're a gifted jewelry maker and a gifted artist. And I am so grateful to know about you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And happy 45 archives.
Thank you
both. That was super cute. Not cute. It was amazing. And hot. It was also very hot too. Speaking of hot, is anybody getting a little warm? I think I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to take 30 seconds to stretch. So this is going to be a 30-second stretch break. So if you are sitting, if you want to stand up, and I know we're all in our comfy pants, right? We're going to do some stretching just to give ourselves a little break because we have more speakers coming and I want everybody to feel good about it. So we're going to just take 30 seconds. Now it's 20 seconds. Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate you. And I want everybody to, the chat is really so exciting. And I wanted to acknowledge that people are sharing their love to each other and remembering stories and saying thank you. And I love that this chat is happening. I wish this was how it was at work when I Zoom at work, but it's not. So we're gonna just absorb all of the energy now and continue to stretch. There we go. Backs out. All right. And take a look at each other. If you see in your Zoom box, there's an arrow. I have 14 pages of boxes, people. Click your arrow and look at each other because you're all so beautiful. And I don't want to rob you of this experience of just saying hello and seeing the names of folks who want to keep their cameras off. That's totally fine too, but please just look around. And could you imagine if we were in an auditorium with each other? That would be soon. So I hope everybody got their stretching, breathing, or their wine, whatever it is that you need. Yes, Jillian, I agree. Everyone is so hot. Literally. I'm so sweaty. So I hope we enjoyed the break because now we're going to jump back in, but I like to have a little break in between. I should have warned you that we were going to do that. All right. So here we are. I'm going to go ahead and present again. And we're going to invite our next speaker, Ilana Dykewoman. Woo-hoo. Ilana Dykewoman was an editor of Sinister Wisdom from 1987 to 1994. She hopes her work continues to honor the memory of her spouse, Susan Levenkind, who died in 2016 and supported the Lesbian Herstory Archives from the moment she knew it existed. Please welcome Ilana Dykewoman. Ilana, please unmute your mic.
Hi. Good afternoon from the West Coast of the United States. I'm going to read from my piece that's in the collection, which I have edited for time and also for the time that's elapsed since I wrote it. It's called It's All History. It's All Herstory Now. Over 70 years ago, I was born in New York City, but left when I was 8 and never lived there again. Nevertheless, New York has always seemed like part of what makes my sense of home in the world. So the first time I went to the Lesbian Herstory Archives, the sense of homecoming was profound. It must have been 1982. I was wandering around the US doing readings and arrived early at the archives which was then in Joan's apartment. Joan gave me the tour famous among lesbians, including photographs and artifacts, work boots, political buttons, bundled letters that had escaped being burnt. Was I awed? Likely. But something else happened to me then, an internal shift in what a lesbian could expect from life. Not only for myself, but for everyone I'd been meeting along the road in small towns and larger cities. We could be remembered, not only in a mythological way, once upon a time there were women who thought they could change the world, but in a concrete card catalog database way. The original group of archivists believed that lesbians were worth time and space, were worth a library. Great encompassing love and recognition created it. The recognition that lesbians, this impossible to define group of women who love women, who have lived for centuries in the shadows, in mental institutions, as witches at the outskirts of town, in solitude and in small groups, are entitled to support, visibility, and a history of our own. The lesbians who created settlement houses, organized rent strikes, helped create the labor, civil rights, and women's movements, could now be three-dimensional actors in our memories. Several years later, I was in the neighborhood with my friend Irina Klefitz, who is somewhere on your screen, who thought we should see if Joan was home, back in the days when we sometimes dropped in on each other. Joan was glad to see us. While she and Irina discussed New York community goings-on, I went to the bathroom, passing through Joan's study. Her computer showed a screensaver loop that read, Joan Nessel, lesbian icon. Damn, I thought, we all know she is, a different kind of icon to every different kind of lesbian. But what chutzpah to put it on your computer like that where any visitor might see. Of course, we were there on Irina's impulse. Maybe Joan turned the computer off when she knew folks were coming over. I saw your screensaver. Oh, a friend made it. I wouldn't have a clue how to do something like that or change it. Of course, Joan Nessel is a hub of connection, a lesbian with friends, a lesbian who reads, who puts value in not only lesbians' written records, but all the fragile artifacts of lesbian life. Back in the 80s, I thought my generation was prolific and out there. We created journals, publishing houses, bookstores, music festivals. We were committed to providing childcare and sign language interpreters, to celebrating all the races, classes, cultures, every kind of body that lesbians come in. Now that I'm over 70, I see how fragile that all was. And despite our creative profusion, how little remains visible of what we made, even of what we're making now. In 1994, I spent several days going through the archives files in its then new Brooklyn brownstone, and everything I learned got used in my novel Beyond the Pale. My friends exhort me to start being serious about putting my own papers somewhere. Putting my papers somewhere. Without what Joan and Deb started, that phrase would be meaningless. Now many of us take it for granted that we have an archive. Don't be complacent. Remember that libraries get looted and burned in periods of upheaval. These are our lives. We make them together. Remember, the archives are always being made by us all. Thank you. Thank you all, and thank you organizers of this wonderful event.
Thank you, Ilana. Beautiful. Along with her partner, Lucinda was the first live-in caretaker of LHA when the archives moved to its own home in Brooklyn. Welcome, Lucinda Zoe. Lucinda, please unmute your mic.
Thank you. Thank you, Shauna. Sean. I'm going to read an excerpt from my piece in the issue, Sleeping with Joan, a multi-generational collection development memoir tale.
Oh, Bert, I bet you're hungry and thirsty. Are you hungry?
Excuse me? Okay. When Joan died in May, the week after Mother's Day, she left us with clear instructions. No service, no riffraff, and a final request to have her ashes scattered in both the Biscayne Bay in Miami and the Charles River in Boston. A complex request, really, the lack of a service notwithstanding. It has been no small task to organize 2 scattering ceremonies on opposite ends of the East Coast. My mother, too, provided clear instructions, certainly more detailed, yet lacking in the simple complexity of Joan's final request. But what does this have to do with LHA and the archives? Well, everything. If you consider this: funerals, wakes, memories, eulogies, photos, memoirs, banks, papers, trusts, executors, attorneys, diaries, letters, memories, ashes, ashes, ashes. So my dad dies in September, and in the previous January, while my mother is attempting to make amends for a lifetime of God knows what all, Joan takes ill in Miami, and we take the emergency she's not going to make it 2 more days trip to be by her side in her coma state. And surprise, she wakes up, rallies, goes home, and has a splendid last 4 months, drinking vodka and cranberry juice, playing with her hairless cat, and swimming naked in her backyard pool. And then she dies pretty quickly in May, slipping away quietly in the night. We went down a month or so later, when her ashes were released, to scatter them in the Biscayne Bay in a bizarre and fitting ceremony of sorts, complete with her totally hammered partner and a bagpiper in full kilt. We flew the remaining Joan ashes back to New York City with us in anticipation of the final scattering in the Charles River in Boston. The city apartment was small, so we put Joan under the bed and have been sleeping with her since. So quite suddenly, I find myself not only the healthcare proxy and memory for my mother, my lesbian mother-in-law, her partner, and eventually my girlfriend, who, you guessed it, dies as well, but also the warden and steward of their life stories, their photos and papers, their letters and maps and diaries, everything for all of them. Which is why I feel compelled to tell my archive story in the context of their stories, in honor of the voices of these bold women that I have lost. We had been sleeping with Joan under the bed for about a year now, and now we were standing in the middle of a footbridge over the Charles River, scattering her ashes into the wind. It was a small party of 7 who came together that October to fulfill part 2 of Joan's last wishes. The day was crisp and bright, a typical Boston fall of oranges and yellows, hues of sienna and barn red. The ceremony was short. We were high up on a bridge over the river, and the day was windy. The ashes twirled down so gracefully, picked up by the wind, swirling up and down, over and up, finally drifting into the water. We grabbed her up in handfuls and flung her out over the water, watching her fall into the wind and twirl, a cosmic dust storm, a mini Milky Way, falling off the edge of the galaxy. Once complete and covered with Joan dust, we left the bridge and headed for a nice seafood restaurant, where Aunt Bet had reserved a room for 7, private, and filled the walls with collages made of images of Joan. Daddy's little girl Joan, debutante Joan, bride Joan, mommy Joan, woman before her time Joan, and old dyke Joan. But I keep going back to that last trip to Miami, the Mother's Day before she died. She sat us down at the table on the patio after dinner, pulled out all of her papers, and started going over her will and her wishes. We listened and nodded, taking it in, assuring her that we would take care of things. But she seemed fine. Afterward, we all jumped naked into the pool in the yard, swam in the moonlight, and damn if she didn't drop dead about 5 days later. Then about 6 months to the day, her partner Arlene passed as well. And we had to fly back down to Miami to fulfill the final promise to rescue and adopt their hairless cat, Elizabeth Kitty Stanton. We arrived for the kitty rescue mission to a house being dismantled completely by the daughter of Arlene, who had nary an interest or a thought of saving a single item from her mother's estate and property, nada. She was relieved that we had come to fetch the hairless cat and couldn't care less what we took out of there, The rest of it was going to the curb in big black garbage bags. Panicked as time was short, I went in seek of Joan's papers, her photos, anything of note that she had left behind. We fled Miami with one hairless cat and an odd assortment of peculiar and cherished artifacts, including a big fat yellow envelope of correspondence between her and her sister and her daughters that covered 2 to 3 decades, and a collection of precious letters between Joan and her first female lover in an aged and tattered manila envelope. All of it headed to the curb. So yes, 20 years later, I'm still sleeping with Joan. The correspondence and papers were carefully put to rest in a box under my bed. Her papers, along with my girlfriend's papers and the many journals, diaries, letters, notes, photos, and ephemera, were all left to me in her will. And I, as executor of her estate, have possession of them all. Of course, I will process my papers improperly upon retirement and donate them to the archives, where they will remain in the loving embrace of the archives for, I trust, generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucinda.
You're welcome.
I want everyone to make sure to know that we do end at 8:30. We're not late. We're actually like right on schedule. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. Stephanie Echeverria-Fenn is a teacher and activist who co-founded the Homeless Lamb Project 37 MLK and the BIPOC-led academic collective Sportula, both of which are heavily informed by the Lesbian Herstory Archives and the herstory she learned staffing the archives, as well as her lived experiences as a disabled, anti-capitalist, Irish Latina fat femme dyke. Stephanie, please unmute your mic.
Thank you very much. So I first discovered the archives in 2006. At the time, I was a homeless 18-year-old and my apartment had just burnt down, and Flavia Rando, who I believe is on this call, took our class to the archives, and it immediately resonated. And so I started working with special collections, and that is where this piece picks up. So over bagels, Maxine Wolf told me stories of her activism in ACT UP and the Lesbian Avengers. LA was formed in response to the firebombing of a dyke home, she said. That's why they ate fire. A deep rage and recognition boils over, and I thought of my burnt out Bushwick apartment. The next time I staffed the archives, I looked up materials from other members of the Lesbian Avengers and find a video of a woman swallowing a tremendous pillar of flame while the dykes around her chant, "The fire cannot consume us. We take it and make it our own." For the rest of my college years, I mouthed that silently to myself. In every moment, I'm convinced I can't possibly continue. A survival mantra through every freezing warehouse, every loss and fear. The fire cannot consume me. I take it and make it my own. I'm now 12 years and 3,000 miles removed from that time, but mouthing that chant as I write this still brings me to thick grief. LHA is the best place to grieve. I needed its soft couch and long history, its acknowledgement of loss right there in its slogan, in memory of the voices we have lost. Growing up in the late 90s, my only vision of queerness had been the sanitized assimilation of the L word and will and grace. Even among my peers, I felt alone, so many of them having grown up with supportive or at least vaguely tolerant parents. Now I find those supportive parents, sisters really, in the words of women from the pre-Stonewall era, archived diaries of the 1950s bar scenes, and hard women who knew the hard price of survival as women, women alone. My sophomore year of college, I fled into a relationship that I hoped might make me straight. It turns out my partner was doing the same thing, and when she started living her truth as a trans woman, and we as dykes together, We were verbally and physically assaulted on the street, even in Dyke Slope, not far from the archives. This is why even the small creature comforts of the archives, the cushy purple couch, the bagels, were psychologically transformative. Lesbians deserve good things, it told me. Moments of pleasure and food and rest, dignity. It is the women of color in LHA who taught me this lesson most clearly. As a biracial dyke, Latina and white, the loss of my family also meant the heartbreaking loss of parts of my heritage and cultural identity. Meeting other Latina lesbians at the archives helped me claim my righteous anger, as well as my own complicity and privilege within these systems as a white passing person of mixed heritage. We Latina dykes worked hard together, and we played hard together. One of the most memorable at-homes at LHA was Sean Smith's In America, They Call Us Dykes, Black Lesbian Lives in the 70s and before. In my senior year of college now, I invited my new girlfriend, and we had a powerful heart-to-heart before the event. She Black of South American heritage, I white of South American heritage, about confronting anti-Blackness within Latinx culture. After the event, we fucked in the special collections closet upstairs and almost got caught because I kept having coughing fits from all the dust. It was a very specific smell, that archives dust, half books and half dyke ephemera. I breathe into the catalog from Sean's at home while I'm writing this to see if it still smells. It doesn't. That at home was 8 years ago now, and it's been sitting in my Oakland apartment for too long to retain the trace. But my heart, my scholarship, my life will always hold that trace of LHA. That's the thing about my shiny new life in California, where I ended up moving for grad school not long after that at home. There are a lot of smart people in Berkeley, people who know more queer theory and gay history than I could ever hope to. But sometimes I just want to ask them, but do you know what that historical event smelled like? The archive showed me the sacredness of preserving these small embodied details of our ordinary lives. That decades from now, reading about dust smells might help a girl like the one I was live on to fight another day. You know all about lesbian art, I want to ask them, but do you know that on the day of the first lesbian art show in New York, that it was snowing? That it was snowing so hard you could barely make it out, but still women flooded to the show, that hungry for a reflection of themselves. Flavia, the one who introduced me to the archives to begin with, and one of the original artists in that show, told me this shortly before my college graduation, as we sat in a 9th Street garden park that used to be the site of the women's jail. As we sat, a veritable symbol of the Lesbian Herstory Archives itself, an elder dyke and a younger dyke together, speaking to each other and caring for each other in the place where they locked women like us up. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Our last reader is Meenakshi Pulapalli.
Hi.
Hi, I'm going to introduce you.
Oh.
Meenakshi is a trans lesbian and volunteers at the Lesbian Herstory Archives. And Meenakshi, you've already unmuted your mic, so please continue.
Thank you, Sean, and everybody else. I'm just going to read a pretty short and simple poem that I wrote for this issue. I wrote it as part of Les Create, which, if you don't know, is a recurring kind of like creative workshop and that happens at the archives. And I wrote it in order to just put down some traces of memories. And I don't know really if they have the same, if they recall the same feelings and types of experiences and have the same weight. like the particular like reference points and touchstones that I have, but I know that everybody has their own rich experiences with the archives, and maybe some of them overlap in that way, but I'm gonna go ahead. The first thing I saw was the plaque that reads Dyke, with letters carved on dark wood, so bold and charming. I know I've never been in any place like this one. Our boots on the parquet floors, and the space around us turns so full suddenly. There are older lesbians speaking to us. Us! Bits and piles of everything, sitting in boxes on shelves, hanging around everywhere. It looks just like a home, and that is not what we were expecting. Do you remember that conductive thrill when we walked into the Butch Femme hallway? Holding hands like it was some knowing secret or fated return, to be there together. Later, we're sitting on a couch and taking it in, both of us overwhelmed and emotional. A place for us, a lesbian place, and to be welcomed into it. A place for us, but not. Cold brass in the names we recognize and shrink. We are aware of the ever-present assumption that we exist in bodies other than our own. But we exist. Our bodies are ours. We are dykes, and we sit here too. We recognize our own, our kind, and we stand beside one another. I am a woman giving birth to myself. We are lesbians. We are gleaners after all. I try to wipe the tears from your cheek. Then I get up to give you space and find something good to share with you. I just want to say also that thinking so much about the archives, getting ready for this, and my experiences there and the people that I've met there, and hearing everybody else talk about it is really emotional, and I miss it, and I miss everybody. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity to connect over this wonderful place that we've made together, especially the people who spoke earlier in this Zoom. And yeah, I'm just really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Meenakshi. Thank you, everyone. We have come to the very close end of our program. And it feels similar to what you just said, Meenakshi. It's like, oh, we miss it, right? Like we miss each other, and we miss the archives, and we miss the lesbians, and we miss the space. And I think in some ways it embodies what an archive is this capturing of memory and connection in each other. So thank you all for coming to this event. It's not over because, as you know, we do want to have a question and answer segment. And so the way that we're going to do that is Elvis has been gathering the questions in the chat, but it turns out that we were so busy making love to each other that we forgot to ask each other questions, which is how it goes, right? I mean, you don't really ask questions until at least the second week. So with that in mind, I think that we can start asking questions right now. So if you have questions, you can put it in the chat, and then we can go ahead and either ask you to ask it in voice, or we can read it. So one question is from Wendy. Wendy, do you want to ask it, or shall I go ahead and ask it for you? Okay. For our founders and friends, what is your favorite memory or story of LHA? Who wants to answer it? And I feel like I want to get out of the slide deck. Should we do that? I'm going to get out of the slide deck so we can see each other. The wall has broken. So does someone want to share their greatest and most important memory? Their favorite memory story from either one of the current coordinators or one of the readers. Joan wants to share one.
Yes, but what I want to share, what I want to say, this creation that you all have done, that we all have done, this is my favorite memory of the archives, because it is the embodiment of what the dream was.
Thanks, Joan. Any others? Okay, you have to, so in the center of your screen, at the bottom, in your participants tab, there is a little oh, Judith has found it. Judith has risen her hand. So there's a little hand raised. So it's like a little blue hand that you can raise. Judith, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I'm so glad I finally, my router went out and I couldn't get onto Zoom, but I just decided I'm going to spend my data on this. And here I am. My favorite memory is when I met Joan in 1973. We lived on the same landing on West 83rd Street in the city of New York. And the archives was in her closet, in her closets and in her bookshelves. And so I feel that among all of us, I saw it at its very beginning. And I've been so proud to have any of my things that I donated in the archives. I felt so lucky and so exalted by the possibility of being part of this beautiful, great, enormous, fabulous lesbian world that Joan and Deb and Val made a place for. And that's what I want to say, my gratitude. And it was a nice beginning, very small.
Thanks so much, Judith. That was wonderfully put. So I'm going to read from some of the ones in the chat from Chris Schwetterman. Has Sinister Wisdom ever done an issue on the herstory and work of Salsa Soul Sisters? It's an important herstory that needs telling. Ooh, I like this question. I want to answer it, and then I'm going to let Julie answer it. In this very issue, there's an article that references the Salsa Soul Sisters. I know it's not the whole issue, but it references it. And in other issues, there are references to the Salsa Soul Sisters in different articles, some of which I have contributed to, and some of which have been by other contributors. But I'll let Julie go ahead and answer that question.
Yeah, that's a great answer. It's been referenced, but there's more to be said. And I put in the chat, I'd love to talk to people if they want to curate either an issue about it or a special section about it. We're always open to doing issues that people are interested in. So folks should email me, julie@sinisterwisdom.org.
I heard a presentation last year, a panel of presenters from the original founders. And it's such a rich history. It needs to be written.
Uh-oh. Can people hear me? Oh,
yes.
Thank you. I thought I had thank you, Chris, for your question. I think there are some Salsa Soul Sisters on the call too, so maybe they'll be excited to participate in that as well, if someone wants to initiate an additional portion. I'm going to jump to another question unless I see a blue hand go up. And that question is from the Junelle Mazer Lesbian Archives. Hello. Do you have a favorite story about a restriction on any donation? Deb, are you still with us? Do you want to jump in on that? I'm like putting Deb on the spot.
Deb should definitely answer this. Got some story.
I know.
Here I come. Okay. Wait a minute. I'm technologically a little bit slow. You know, we don't have restrictions. People self-select in some ways, and other people send whatever they're moved to send. But it's not been an issue for us to try to restrict anything. If you feel that it represents your life, if you feel it represents you, then you send it. So we're not, there are some places that have very strict guidelines of what they'll accept. But my take and my explanation would be that we don't, unless somebody who works with the archives feels differently, or feels like we do have some restrictions.
Well, I would say, well, what about, I mean, when people donate to the archives, sometimes they have restrictions. Because I remember there was a special collection that was restricted until like the year 2050, and it just drove me insane that I couldn't. And you were you took it off site, but I mean, we have accepted collections that have restrictions, and we honor them. I mean, when people bring them to us, we honor what they give us and what their requests are. But there have been a few special collections that were restricted by time, as I recall. Isn't that right? By a certain year?
Yes, and you know what's absolutely fascinating is Lucinda, you're absolutely right. But what is fascinating is some of them were restricted for 25 years because people were uncomfortable, I guess, being out or being present. And then you open it up 25 years is long a time ago, and you open it up and you look at it and you say, realizing that 25 years has passed, I'm not sure why they were uncomfortable and wanted it hidden. I can understand people sometimes don't want to bring out their friends or their lovers or things like that. But sometimes after 25 years, we look at things and it's, okay, now it can be open to everybody. But yeah, no, we honor any restriction that people have, as long as we can handle it appropriately.
Can I say something?
Yes,
ma'am.
Sure.
Hi. When you said the restriction, hi there. When you said the restriction, the only thing that I thought of was somebody asked me actually today, are there things that we don't accept? And I thought of that time when we got that special collection that had the vial of menstrual blood, and we had to decide whether we should keep it or not. And we went through this whole discussion about how we keep hair when everyone sends us the hair they cut off when they came out. And we finally decided that since that vial of menstrual blood, which had been given to this woman by her lover, and she had a whole note about it, and it had been sitting in that box for years already before we ever processed it, and nothing had happened to it. And we decided we would just keep it in there. So I always think about that when somebody asks me, like, can we give you anything? I think, yeah, well, this woman gave us a vial of menstrual blood, whatever. We'll figure it out, you know, because it was important to her.
I love that story. That's one of my favorite stories too, Maxine. I see that Rosalie has her hand up, and it may be the time for our last question, but we'll see. Rosalie, would you like to ask your question?
Well, actually, it's not a question. It's a little statement. I wanted to say hello to Debbie and Joan. I came to the archives many years ago when it was in their home with Blue. And Blue and I did a lot of research with Joan and Deb. And we started many groups, one of which was Dyke Anarchists. But it was just lovely seeing you both. This is like great. I feel like a million years old. Here's my cat. So it was a long, long, long time ago. I did go to Brooklyn to visit it, but you know, I lived in the city. So anyway, I don't know if you remember, Deb, you and I used to see each other at the Feminist March. And I haven't seen Joan for quite a while, but I do remember, Joan, our conversations about butches. And when you went to Australia, anyway, nice seeing everybody.
Sure.
Thanks, Rosalie, for that. And I'm gonna leave now to the panelists to say any last words, the readers rather. And I see Joan is like, I need to say Joan, of course, absolutely.
I just want to, in terms about what we don't do, a very early conversation was about why I said we're not a role model archives. And the complexity of the vision of today shows it. So a visitor came who was setting up the archives, the June Mesa collection in the beginning. And she said to me, but Joan, if there were a lesbian group of Nazis, you wouldn't collect that, would you? And I said, yes, we would. That is the whole point. First of all, you can't predict what future of us will need. We can't even predict who the future us will be. We can just be as honest and open and as complex. It's not about saying lesbians are all good and they did all these wonderful things. No, 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 no. It's about we are part of the histories like now, the histories that create our times. And the archives, we meant it to be the most complex gift we could give the future. Not a cleansed one, not an oversimplified one. So I just, yes. So, and the other thing I want to say is we started and everybody said, you can't do it. You don't have a building, you don't have money, you don't have this, you need this. And I just want to say, because every face here represents a new beginning possible of something. And you know, in the times we are living, we need more grassroots taking care of each other than ever before. So if the archives means anything, it means you can take the resources that you have at your fingertips. Some of them are your friends, are your communities, and bring into being that which is needed. Bring into being that which is absent, because more than ever, we're going to have to take care of each other.
Exactly. A round of applause to all of the speakers. Thank you to all of the contributors. There were too many people who contributed to this meeting. So I put it into the chat. Again, the chat is being archived, and we're not going to end until we sing a song. So I know that everybody song, but I wanted to also thank all of the people who contributed to the issue that didn't get into the issue. There were so many submissions, and we have a new website, and I know that the links went into the chat, so please visit the lesbian-herstory-archives.org. I resisted every temptation to share my screen and do a demo of the site, but I didn't do it. I was, took my librarian hat off. Instead, please visit the site, go to Sinister Wisdom, get a copy of this issue. It's really wonderful. Donate to the Lesbian Herstory Archives. We will be asking you during our giving, whenever giving season starts. So please look out for that letter, because we're going to be sending it very soon. And I'm going to pass it over to Julie Enzer. Unless, before I do, are there any last words from any of the readers?
I have a last word.
Do it, Paula.
Joan said it and Alana said it, that everyone who's on this call, remember how the archive started, and just remember that if we have to do it again, we'll do it again. Remember how we can all start it again if that's what our future holds.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. And with that, we pass it to you, Julie.
Thank you. And Sean, you're going to cue up the song
as soon as you tell me.
All right. So I just want to thank everyone for coming this evening. As Sean said, thank the speakers and the attendees. And I want to especially thank Sean. She's getting lots of love in the chat box as well. She's done a great job planning this and executing this event, and did a great job with Elvis and Red on the issue. It's been a pleasure to work with you all. So we're going to end by playing the song that we often start our events with. It's called The L Word by Your Girlfriend. Everyone is welcome. I think, Sean, we can hear it if you don't share screen.
Oh, so I didn't realize I shared screen.
I think if you play it on in the background of your computer and you don't mute yourself,
okay,
we are all good to hear it. I think we'll try that. So everybody, if you're set to gallery view, you can scroll through and see everyone smiling and dancing as we enjoy our final few minutes together. And then when the music ends, Sean will end the Zoom broadcast, and we will send you tiny bits of lesbian light with a passion for archive out into the world to do more good. Start up the song, Sean.
Here's, look, here's this.
Nope, we can't hear it.
You can't hear it?
No.
All right, I guess I got to share.
All right, do the share.
Each other.
I'll vamp for a minute while you do the share. The interns know how to do this, and here we are.
Okay, when you share the screen, you also have to hit share computer audio.
Exactly. Let me see if I can just share music. Oh, music or computer sound only. Boom, I found it. All right, let's try that one more time.
All right.
I can't chat.
Come on and say the L word. It's the only chance you got to reclaim our name and not live in shame to try to improve our lot. Come on and say the L word. It's the only chance you got to stop the lying and denying. And come on and give it a shot. And everybody say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Come on, say lesbian. Now, the last time you said the L word, did your stomach take a turn? Did you look around to see if the sound is loud enough to make the ears burn? Did you say it in a whisper, or did you just say gay? Did your face turn red? Did you decide instead to save it for another day? Then do yourself say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Come on, say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian.
We know there are risks involved. No oppressed group has ever gained their freedom without risk. And no oppressed group has ever gained their freedom without a physical movement. So right here, in broad daylight on the courthouse steps, we want to take this day to announce the official launching of the Fairness Campaign to work toward fairness and justice for lesbians and gays, and to see that fairness entrenched in city law.
Do you think it sounds like a rare disease, a perversion, a plague of vice? All it takes is a little practice. But come on and take my advice, and everybody say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Come on, say lesbian. 'Cause if you can't say it, it's hard to be it. If you can't be it, they can't see it. If they can't see it, they'll deny it. If we all deny it, we're in the closet for life. For life. Or dead. Silence equals dead. Go on.
Violence against lesbians and gays has increased every year since the start of the AIDS crisis. We still fear losing our jobs. We are denied places to live. We are here today to say enough is enough. We are ready to live as full and equal members of society. And we are ready to fight for our freedom.
So give me an L. Give me an E. Give me an S. Give me a B. Give me an I. And everybody say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Come on, say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. for you, or your teammate on the soccer field, or the wise one that's helping you through. I think of your high school basketball coach, or your last music festival crush, or your ultimate erotic fantasy. Yourself in the eye, and with warm regard, say the L word, say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Come on, say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Happy them say lesbian. Happy them say lesbian. Come on, say lesbian. Everybody say lesbian. Do you love it?
Lesbian. Yeah.
Julie, take it away.
Thank you. Sean, I think you have to now end the meeting.
All right, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. If you want to save the chat, you can do that now. Save the chat bars on the side.
Thank you so much.
Inspired.
Thank you, Saskia. Thank you.
Saskia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Bye, everybody. That was fun. Bye, Joan.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Deb.
Community. Love
It
you.
was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
It's me, Lisa.
Evening. Wonderful.
Hi.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Love you, silver foxes.
Yeah, the silver foxes.
The silver foxes.
Silver pussies.
Much love to everyone.
Yay. I just got on. I didn't even know it was happening. This is great.
Okay. You got the last seconds.
I know.
Video.
Right.
Most important thing.
No one wants to go home. No.
Paula. No.
So many different
Everybody. Where's Joan?
You don't want to be
Deb.
I know.
I love you all so much.
I can't do it.
Bye-bye, Joni.
Oh, it's Saskia.
I'm hungry. I gotta go have dinner. Bye-bye. Good night, everybody.
Bye. Good night, Lucinda.
Good night. So good to see you all. Now for dinner. Bye, Sean. Thank you, Sean. Good job.
Good job. Thank you, Sean. Yes.
Thank you, Sean.
Hi, Sean.
But me.
Everybody.
Hi, Teddy. Am I
Hi,
sitting next to?
Saskia.
Much love. Where's the baby?
The baby.
And there's Deb.
Where's the family, Johnson?
What?
I'm not at home. I had to separate.
Oh,
You
okay.
can see. The only one that nobody
Well,
can
we love
see,
you.
'cause I can't get on if you're on.
It's too hard. Press the red button.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Have a great evening.
Love and light. Deb and Joan. Press the
Hi,
red button.
everybody.
I love you all.
Are you still here?
So great to be on this particular thing. All right.
Are you still here? Linda, show your face.
Oh, me?
Something. Yeah, say something.
Say something. I'm just like floored. I'm feeling great.
There you go.
So honored to be a part of all of this.
Okay, say it again. Yay, there you are.
Yay.
Deb, where are you?
I can't get on.
Yeah,
because
Rory's
Bob won't
number.
let me on.
All right, Deb, are you still here?
Hi, everybody. I gotta get off before I can.
Deb, show your face.
Have a
Now
great
that
night.
now that she's turning everybody off.
Bye from Atlanta.
Here, go there.
All right, bye.
Oh, Janice and Tina.
Get off.
It's
Good night,
Lisa.
everybody, and thank you for coming.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Linda.
inviting me.
Thank you. It was so
Thank
great
you.
to see you, Linda.
Oh, it's so good to be
Teddy
seen.
and Deb and
Hi,
Joan. All us oldies but goodies.
Hi, everyone. Deb wouldn't let me get on.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, we don't.
Oh, you're on now. You're looking good.
Well, it's wonderful. Liz, Beth, and Linda, Lauren. Oh,
So good to see you.
So good to see you, everybody.
Take your screenshots now while you still can.
John, this was amazing. Thanks, everybody.
Can we do this every Thursday? This is so
Yeah, I
wonderful.
like that idea. I vote for weekly.
This is
Like we used to be around the table in
This is better
13A.
than therapy.
That's right. Okay, good night, everybody. Hi, Deb and Teddy. You're showing up in my screen here.
Love you all. Good luck hitting the end button.
I know.
I don't have it. I'm not the
Don't
host.
do it.
I can't do it. The host has left.
Don't do it.
You're a wonderful host, Sean. You did a fabulous job. You did a fabulous job with us.
Here all night if you want to. There's no host in the call.
Oh my God.
Oops.
Can have a sleepover.
Yeah, exactly. Let me at least make sure we're not.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Love you all. Bye.
Is that Deb and Teddy?
Oh my God, we were so forever.
Good job.